What is up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new video, and today I'm going to be going over my 2021 NBA free agency predictions. Now I'm here on Spot Track, whatever this website is. It'll be linked down in the description below, and it has like 250 players on this website. I'm not obviously going to be going over every single one. Like the two Antetokounmpo brothers, they don't really matter. Like Ryan Arcidiacono, Trevor Ariza, like those guys don't matter. I'm just going to be going over the key free agents. So yeah, let's start off right now with Jarrett Allen. Personally, I think Jarrett Allen will be a restricted free agent, and I think if he makes any more than $20 million a year, 22 maybe, then he's going to walk. I think he will go to a team like Charlotte, like OKC, like Detroit possibly, like Houston, a team that has money to work with, and they don't necessarily have to be a good team. So I think if I were to predict where Jarrett Allen will go, I think he will be staying, and I think they're going to be drafting Evan Mobley and run those two next to each other in kind of a twin towers in Cleveland. We're going to skip over them. Carmelo Anthony, I think, is going to re-sign Portland. He's a good fit. I like what he could do off the bench for that team. Lonzo Ball, now he's interesting. The Pelicans just cleared up a lot of money yesterday, trading for Valanciunas, giving up Steven Adams, and Drew Holiday, Eric Bledsoe. And that kind of gives them a lot of money to really match salaries if a team like the Knicks were to offer Lonzo Ball a good package or a good big contract. And it's whether or not really New Orleans wants to go out and sign Lonzo Ball for maybe 15, 20 million plus a year. But personally, I do think that Lonzo Ball is going to be a New York Knick. I don't think that the Pelicans are going to match that, want to take on that big contract that Lonzo is going to take. So for that reason, I have Lonzo going to the New York Knicks. Will Barton, I do think is going to return. Nicholas Batum is interesting because he may or may not want money. I think he will return to the Clippers on a lower than $5 million a year deal. There's a fly in my room. A bunch of these guys don't necessarily matter. Khem Birch, I could see returning to Toronto. Tony Bradley will be returned to OKC. Right now, he's technically the only... Well, OKC does have the bird rights on him, and if he were to be brought back to Oklahoma City, which I do believe he will be the only starting center, or the only center on roster, unless they obviously go in free agency and sign a center, maybe possibly like Jarrett Allen, Rashaan Holmes, or draft someone in the draft. Brazdeikis, Sterling Brown, Bruce Brown, I do see returning to Brooklyn. I don't know necessarily how much money he's going to get. I don't expect him to get much. Probably around $4 million or so a year, maybe on like a 2 for $8 deal. But yeah, New York Knicks with Reggie Bullock, unrestricted free agent. I think the Knicks will not be bringing him back. I think Bullock's going to ask for around $6 to $8 million a year. I don't think the Knicks really want to waste that money on Reggie Bullock. He was all right for the Knicks this season. He's 30 years old, so I don't necessarily see a situation where New York is going to really want to bring in a guy like Reggie Bullock back. Same here goes for Alec Burks. Both these guys want probably around $6 to $8 million, and I just don't see a scenario where New York really wants to bring these guys back. They didn't do too much necessarily in the playoffs, maybe a catch-and-shoot three here and there, pull up mid-range, but that's about it. I don't really see the Knicks really wanting to go out and signing either of the BU guys here. Is that Rick Carlisle? Why? Okay. Caruso will be returning most likely back to the Knicks on like a 2 or 3 year deal. Zach Collins on Portland, I think they have to bring him back possibly because of injuries. If not, he's just going to walk and nobody's going to pick him up just because he's out for a long time. I have something stuck in my throat, sorry. Mike Conley's interesting. Now, he's an unrestricted point guard in this draft, and I don't necessarily think that he's going to want $30 million a year. I think he's going to go more for the 15 per route and try to go for like a 345 type deal. And I do think the Jazz are going to give him that contract and will return to the Jazz. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see if a team like possibly the Mavericks or the Chicago Bulls, who are in need of a starting point guard, offer Mike Conley a contract. And I think Conley would take a deal if he's willing to get $20 million per year for 2 or 3 years. I think he, as a player, would want to accept that deal, but I just think he's kind of likes the fit in Utah, and I think he's going to be back in a Jazz uniform for a couple more seasons. Demarcus Cousins, I honestly have no clue where he's going to go. I think he's going to be an unrestricted free agent and go to a team like Dallas, maybe Miami next season. Torrey Craig will probably return. DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan's interesting. I don't think he's going to be returning to San Antonio next season. I personally think that he's either going to go to I think he's going to go to the Lakers. I really do think he's going to go to the Lakers on a small contract, maybe around $4-5 million. Sorry, my dog started barking. I interrupted. But I think DeMar DeRozan's going to go to one of the LA teams, probably the Lakers, just because he's going to want to get $5 million or so a year. I think he's going to really want to go for that championship now. He's got his bag a couple times. He's been a max contract player twice in his career now, and I think he just wants to return home, play for one of his hometown teams, and I think that's going to be the Lakers. Playing as the third scoring option behind Anthony Davis and LeBron James is really going to be great for them. Also provides the Lakers with a little bit of defensive help on the defensive side of things. And I think signing a guy like DeMar DeRozan will be great for the Lakers and just help them get that third somewhat star. He's been the best player for the past. He's been the best player on the Raptors for a good period of time and on the Spurs for the past few years. So I think the Lakers really get a nice player in DeMar DeRozan. Hamidou Diallo is most likely going to be back on the Pistons next year, I believe. Spencer Dinwiddie. Now, I honestly think Spencer Dinwiddie is going to be asking for a lot of money, like $25 million a year. Not that I don't think Spencer Dinwiddie is necessarily worth that much money, but he's coming off a big injury, so there's going to be a lot of teams that are willing to spend money on Spencer Dinwiddie, but I don't know if $25 million is necessarily worth it for a 28-year-old point guard who's coming off a big injury, and we haven't really seen him play much basketball in like a year and a half or so. He played like a little bit in the I think it was the preseason he played, or it might have been like the first 2 games of the season. But I think Spencer Dinwiddie is going to go to the Chicago Bulls. That's if they don't get any other offers to another point guard like a Mike Conley or Lonzo Ball. So I think Spencer Dinwiddie is going to actually return to the Chicago Bulls because I believe he played there for either the preseason or for like one season or half a season as like an end of rotation guy. Goran Dragic, I do expect to return back to the Miami Heat on a minimum contract. Andre Drummond, same for him. I do expect him to return to the Lakers on a minimum contract. Chris Dunn in Atlanta. Again, I do think he's going to return back to A-Town. Who else do we got down here? Evan Fournier. Fournier's interesting because he could return to Boston, or I could see Boston honestly just letting him walk. Potentially after not really doing much in the second half of the season, after trading for him, obviously, for like 2 seconds. And clearing up like 17 or so mil, that could be huge for them, and maybe wanting to go out and get somebody, but you're also going to have to lock up some of your other guys. But I think Fournier is going to return to Boston just on a smaller contract, maybe not 17 mil a year, maybe around like 11, 12 mil or so. So yeah, I think Fournier is going to return back to Boston. Harry Giles is, I don't know why I'm mentioning Harry Giles. Sure, you could stay in Portland. Devontae Graham's interesting. I think he will re-sign on a slightly bigger deal in Charlotte and probably let Malik Monk walk, who's making some of that money, and just kind of give Devontae Graham like Malik Monk's old contract. I really do like Devontae in Charlotte, playing as the backup point guard role behind Lonzo Ball and Terry Rozier, or moving to like the shooting guard position, and having like that 3-guard lineup in Charlotte is actually really entertaining to watch, and it works out well for them. So I think Devontae Graham's going to go back to Charlotte on a good deal. Jeff Green, I think, is going to go to Milwaukee. I really would like a Jeff Green fit in Milwaukee as like that backup center, backup 4. Same with Blake Griffin. I think Blake Griffin's going to return, obviously, to the Nets, on a small contract, pretty much like what he's doing now, and just try to ring chase for the rest of his career, or at least for the next foreseeable future. Tim Hardaway Jr., I expect to return to Dallas, but in a sign-in trade. And my guess is he's going to go to a team possibly like the Pelicans, if the Pelicans are willing to do a sign-in trade, working around Lonzo Ball and then maybe a Tim Hardaway Jr. He's making like 17 or so mil right now, and I think they potentially use that contract of his, if he were to sign to something similar, which I expect him to do, around $15 million or so, and get Alonzo Ball potentially to play alongside of Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. Montrezl Harrell, I think, is going to be going to the Charlotte Hornets. I said this last year. He does have a player option, which I think is going to decline. I think Montrezl Harrell is going to decline like a $10 million player option. Try to go to Charlotte on like a 2-year, $20 million deal or something like that. $20 million per, or like 17.5. So I think Montrezl will be a great fit. Charlotte is in desperate need of a center, and I think a guy like Montrezl Harrell will be perfect for them. Josh Hart, I think, will return to the Pelicans. Udonis Haslem's probably not even going to be the NBA next season, or he shouldn't be at least. Rashaan Holmes, I think he's either going to return back to Sacramento, or I think he's going to be going to OKC and being their starting center for this next upcoming season or two, on around like a $12-13 million a year contract, which is what I would expect a guy like Rashaan Holmes. He had a solid season last year in Sacramento, and I would actually like him to play in OKC. I think he could go to a team like OKC and have a good impact being a somewhat veteran leader. He's played in the league for like 6-7 years or so. So I think Rashaan Holmes in OKC will be a great fit for them. THT, I see returning back to the Lakers, whether that's via sign and trade to a team if the Lakers are willing to make a big deal revolving around KCP, THT, and Kuzma for a star or star, whatever, however you want to classify some of these guys in the NBA right now. So I think Taron Horton-Tucker will be back on the Lakers, either if he's playing next season for them or if he's going to be brought back just for a sign and trade. Dwight Howard, I do see him returning to Philly on a minimum contract. He really liked it there, and he just loved feeding off that crowd atmosphere. Dwight Howard's the most Philadelphia player you can really have. Serge Ibaka is interesting. I do think he's going to return back to the Clippers next year. It's tough to say because I think Ibaka, he's 32 years old. He could be a starting center in a team, or he could, like the Clippers, or he could be that backup in like Miami or something, and down in like, I don't know. Yeah, I think Serge Ibaka is going to return back to the Clippers. I don't necessarily see him leaving necessarily. Reggie Jackson's interesting. Now, there's so much point guards in the league or in this free agency class that are all around the same skill set that I think are going to sign to either like a Chicago, a New York. I mean, mainly those are the two teams that are in desperate need of a point guard. And I think Reggie Jackson, if he doesn't go to either Chicago or New York, will go back to the Clippers and be that starting point guard. With Kawhi Leonard out next year, I think he'll be a good 3 option on that team behind Paul George and somebody else, whether or not that's in the draft or that's Serge Ibaka for some reason. Terrence Mann, I think it's his time to shine. But yeah, I think Reggie Jackson's going to return back to the Clippers. If not, he's going to either go to the New York Knicks or the Chicago Bulls. But I think he's going to return back to the Clippers. Who else do we got down here? Enes Kanter. I see, honestly, going back to the Knicks. Or I see Enes Kanter going to the Pelicans before the Steven Adams trade. But as of now, I think he goes to Portland. I think he stays in Portland. He was a good backup center when oh my gosh, when Yusuf Nurkic was out. He actually was a really good center, putting up 20 rebounds a game some nights, was great for them. And I liked what he did on the offensive and defensive side of the glass for Portland. Let's see who else is interesting down here that we really need to talk about. Kawhi Leonard is the biggest free agent on the market. And I think he stays next season on a 2-year deal. Next year, he's going to be hurt, obviously. He's most likely going to be missing the entire season. And then I think he does like a 1+1. So I think he does like a 1+1 where he sits out next season and then he accepts his player option and plays one more season with, which would be the 2023 Clippers team, runs it back. If they don't win it all or make a great finals run or whatever it may be, then he leaves. But I do think Kawhi Leonard is going to be running it back in Clippers. If he was not injured, it would be a different story. I think he could potentially leave. But I think Kawhi Leonard's willing to run it back with the current Clippers squad, but on the bench and injured for next season. Hey, make that free money while sitting on the bench. And then in 2023, would it be? Oh, no, I think it'll be 2022 into 2023. Kawhi Leonard will be playing potentially his last season in a Clipper uniform. If they don't win it all that year, then I think he's on the move. But yeah, Kyle Lowry next. I think he's going to go to Philly. I do think Kyle Lowry's going to go to Philly on a smaller-ish contract. I don't know. I think he'd be a great fit, potential sign and trade there for maybe a guy like Danny Green. Bring him back to Toronto and try to go win now mode potentially. Lauri Markkanen, I think, is going to be a Spur. I think Lauri Markkanen is going to get a big offer from San Antonio. The Bulls just aren't going to want to bring Markkanen back. He wasn't that amazing in Chicago for the past 4 seasons, and I think Chicago is just going to give up on him. And if they don't want to bring him back, I think they could potentially do a sign and trade for like a future second-round pick, future first-round pick potentially. Wesley Matthews is going to be back. T.J. McConnell is going to be back, I believe. Who else is down here? Patty Mills is going to be returning most likely on like a 2-year deal minimum. Paul Millsap, I do believe, is going to be returning to the Nuggets. Who else really is down here that's interesting? Nerlens Noel. I think he's going to be a Maverick. I think Nerlens Noel is going to be the backup center for the Dallas Mavericks. He's wanting a bit more money this season. He got $5 million this past season from the Knicks, but he wants a lot more, and he's one of the best defensive bigs in the entire NBA. And I think having 2 great defensive-minded centers in Kristaps Porzingis and Nerlens Noel as your backup is going to be great for them. I think Nerlens Noel could get like a $30 million contract in Dallas. Yeah, I think Miami is going to bring back Kendrick Nunn via sign and trade and try to bring in another star to that team. Victor Oladipo, I do see return to Miami. He barely played there, and that's where he really wanted to go. So I see no scenario where Victor Oladipo really leaves. Kelly Olynyk, I don't know. I really don't know. I feel like Kelly Olynyk could be a potential Phoenix Sun with Dario Saric being out next season. Kelly Oubre, I think it's going to be back in Golden State and used as trade bait with his money. I think they'll bring him back and sign and trade him, and I think Golden State will bring another 3rd star into the bag, which is crazy. Chris Paul, I do believe, will opt into his player option, make $40 million a year, be another championship caliber team next season for the Phoenix Suns. Same with Cameron Payne. I think both of these 2 guys will be back in Phoenix Suns uniforms next season. Bobby Portis, I do see leaving. I think he's literally could go to any sort of veteran team on the market. I think he could potentially go to like a Philly, stay back in Milwaukee. I do think Bobby Portis wants to be back in Milwaukee, but I think he is willing to get a contract somewhere else rather than championship. Even though he loves the city and the city loves him, I think Bobby Portis already has his ring. He wants to go get that bag. He's looking for probably $8 to $10 million a season, and I think he's gonna get an offer from some teams, maybe like in Atlanta possibly, or one of the Texas teams, either the Spurs, the Mavericks, or the Rockets. Yeah, I think Bobby Portis is done and wants his contract, unless Milwaukee's willing to give him $8 to $10 million a year. I don't even know if they could do that financially, but who knows. Norman Powell, I do see him returning to Portland. JJ Reddick, if he stays in the league, I see him probably going to a championship contending team like the Clippers or the Lakers. Josh Richardson, I think, is going to return to Dallas, and they're going to use him as trade bait in a sign-and-trade potential scenario. Duncan Robinson, I see returning. Mitchell Robinson, I see returning as well. Derrick Rose, I think, is either going to return to the Knicks, or if he gets $20 million a year, which is what some teams are asking for, I think he will go to whatever team is willing to give him $20 million a year. Dennis Schroeder is going to return to the Lakers in a sign-and-trade deal and use him as trade bait. I know a lot of these players are just going to be returning as trade bait, but that's kind of what a lot of the rumors are and what I honestly think is going to happen. I think Daniel Tice is actually going to return back to Boston. I don't know why. I just see Daniel Tice returning back to Boston on a vet minimum at nearly 30 years old. Gary Trent Jr., I think, is going to go back to Portland also. PJ Tucker, I think, can stay in Milwaukee. If not, I see him going to Miami. Who else is down there that's really worth mentioning? We got Hassan Whiteside. I feel like Hassan Whiteside's that type of guy to leave the Kings and then go to a team like Houston. I think he could potentially go to Houston, depending on if Mobley falls to the Rockets. If not, I think Whiteside would want to be that backup big and kind of play with his own unit on the second, play with his own players in that second unit. Lou Williams, I think, will return to Atlanta. And Cassius Winston and Cody Zeller, the final guy, I think he will return to Charlotte on a minimum-ish deal. He's got his money throughout his career. I think he's going to ask for about $6-7 million a year, and that's basically it. But yeah, those are my free agent predictions. I don't know how long this video was. It might have been a long time. It may not have. If you enjoyed the video, leave it a like. NBA draft is two days away. I'm going to be live, twitch.tv/Zeals1. One of the links in the description down below. I'm going to be live for the draft. And yeah, I'll see you guys. Have a good night. Peace.